Hello everyone, so in today's video I wanted to do a quick sort of makeup tutorial for more pale skin. I am extremely pale when I have absolutely no fake tan on. I do my makeup slightly different when I don't have a tan on. This is just my personal preference. I've done a sort of everyday kind of makeup look, but I will do a little bit more of a dramatic one for pale skin. If you want to find out how you can get this makeup, then please just keep watching. To start off this look, I'm going to do what I would normally do and prime my eyes with a little bit of concealer. And then just take my sponge and just blend it in. I'm going to use some of the shadows from my Naked 3 palette and some from my Custom Z palette as well. So just to set my concealer, I'm going to take the colour Strange from the Naked 3 palette and just sort of sweep it all over my eye from my lashes to my brow bone. For my initial sort of crease colour, I'm going to take Wedge by MAC and mix it with a little bit of Peach Smoothie by Makeup Geek. I'm just going to put a nice light wash of colour in my crease. Nothing too heavy and dramatic. When I'm pale, I like to keep my eyeshadows a bit softer and not as heavy and dramatic. And generally what I do is I keep the crease sort of slightly warmer. That's why I'm adding some Peach Smoothie in, just to warm Wedge up a little bit. So just very softly blend that in. So it just makes a small difference, nothing huge. I'm then going to mix Nuna and Limit from the Naked 3 palette. It's both these sort of matte colours in the palette. And I'm just going to add that just a bit lower than I did with Wedge and Peach Smoothie. And add it a little bit to the outer corner as well. Again, it's nothing too dramatic. It's just nice and soft. And then just take my Lauren Luke brush again, just blend it all out. And then for my lid colour, I'm going to take the colour Burnout, which is, it's just like a nice sort of slightly darker pink, on my MAC 242 brush. And I'm just going to sweep it across my lid, just to give a bit of sheen. And then this colour, for some reason, I don't really reach for it when I have a tan. I reach for it when I'm pale. This is Satin Taupe from MAC. And this used to be my favourite eyeshadow. I just used to love it so much. And I don't really reach for it as much anymore because I'm generally got some sort of a tan on. So I'm just going to take it on a Real Techniques base shadow brush. And I'm just going to dip it in. Tap off any excess. And I just like to put it just in the outer corner, or the sort of outer half of my eye. I just feel like it looks really sort of pretty on pale skin. I think it looks gorgeous on people with a tan as well. I feel like this shadow used to get talked about quite a lot, and now it doesn't get talked about anymore. And if you're into sort of cool toned eyeshadows and you're looking to get some from MAC, then I definitely recommend this colour because it is a really nice colour. And I'm just going to build it up quite a bit on the outer corner. Just take my Morphe brush that I was using again, just to help soften that up into the eye. And then I'm just going to keep building on this until it's as deep as I want. I'm going to add some liner now, and I'm going to do my normal winged liner. Another thing that I tend to do when I'm pale is keep it a lot smaller. I don't know why. I just feel like, because, you know, it's like a big thick black line. When I'm pale, I just tend to not make it as big. I tend to make it a lot smaller and a lot softer, just by habit. I'm just going to quickly add my wing. I'm going to use my normal Maybelline Gel Shot Liner. What's new? I love this stuff with my Lauren Luke angled brush. So I've just done like a simple sort of small wing, quite similar to what I normally do, but like I said, it's just slightly thinner. And I've just curled my eyelashes, and I'm going to apply some mascara. I like to apply quite a lot of mascara when I'm more pale. This is the Rimmel Volume Flash Scandalised Mascara. This is the waterproof one. To start off my face, I'm just going to add my moisturiser, especially on like my forehead where it's a bit dry. being out in the sun, and I'm even sunburned my scalp. And then for my primer, I'm going to use my Nivea Men's Post Shave Balm because I haven't actually used this yet with my new Maybelline foundation, and I really want to see if this is good with it, so I'm going to give this a go. And I'm only going to use quite a small amount and then really work it into my skin. Then for my foundation, I'm going to use my Maybelline Fit Me Matte and Poreless. This is in the colour 105. It's just ever so slightly too dark for me. I'm going to mix in a couple of drops of the Body Shop Lightening Drops. I absolutely love these. I just think they're so good. And especially if you've got like a really thick full coverage foundation and it's slightly too dark, you add in a couple of this. It does thin it down slightly, but nothing too dramatic. So I'm just going to mix these two together. And I don't like to add too much foundation when I'm pale, just because I feel like it looks very sort of mask-like. And because I don't add a lot of products on top of it, I'm going to try and keep this as light as possible. So before I add my foundation, I'm going to add a very thin layer of my NYX HD Concealer in the colour green, just to any areas of my face that I feel are a bit extra red. And then taking my Sigma Flat Top Kabuki and just buffing it in a bit just so it's not too heavy. So the foundation brush that I'm going to use is my Real Techniques Expert Face Brush. I haven't actually used this brush in forever, but I do find that if I don't want as much coverage, I'll use this, just because I feel like you can put a little bit on and then just really work it into the skin. So I'm just going to add a very thin layer. And I find as well that this just helps to make sure that the green doesn't show through. I do really like this brush. If you're not like a sponge, you know, a beauty blender person, and you're more of a foundation brush, then this is definitely a good one to go for. So I tend to let my freckles show a lot more when I am pale than when I'm tanned. So I've just got a very thin layer of my foundation on. It's a good colour match. Add in a couple of the lightning drops. Definitely helps. And then when it comes to sort of highlighting and contouring, I'm a lot more minimal with that. Just because I find that it's a lot easier to look very sort of grey and muddy, or look very orange if you're not careful when you're pale. I still want to add a little, just because I want to give my face a little bit of definition, I do still want to, you know, do a little bit of highlighting and contouring. So I'm just going to take my concealer. I'm not going to do it in the big sort of dramatic triangle like I normally would. And this is in the colour 10. As I've said, apparently the colour 15 is supposedly a lot lighter. That is something that I'll be picking up next time, but it's quite dark compared to the rest of my face. And then I take my Beauty Blender sponge and add a couple more of the whitening drops to it, just to mix in with my concealer. You could put it on like a palette or something, but I just find that this works just as well. But I would definitely recommend these. I want to get the darkening ones as well, just because I've heard they're good for sort of bronzing. So I just take it and I just put a few dots on my concealer, and then with whatever's left I'll just add it to like my chin, down my nose and on my forehead, and it just adds a very subtle sort of brightness that's not too crazy. And then I'm just going to blend all this in. So it doesn't add too much of a highlight, but I feel like if I don't add the whitening drops, then it looks almost darker. And then just to set all of my foundation, I'm going to use my Rimmel Match Perfection powder, the loose powder. I don't really tend to bake as much as well, or I don't really tend to bake at all when I don't have any tan on for some reason. Again, I'm not really sure why I do that. I just find that it doesn't really do that much in terms of brightening. So as long as I set my concealer, I normally leave it at that. The other thing that I love about this Rimmel powder is because it's got a slight sort of pink. I've taken the sifter out. It's got like a slight sort of pink hue to it. I just feel like it's a lot better for pale skin, because then it's not so sort of yellowy orange underneath your eyes. So I'm just going to take like a small flat fluffy brush, and I'm just going to pack on some of the powder into the brush. Tap off any excess. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to look up, and then I'm just going to press it under my eye. And I find that this just sets it, and it's almost like baking, but I'm just not packing on as much just because I don't feel like I need to. But it's the same kind of technique where you're sort of really pressing powder in. I normally just take like a small fluffy brush and just take a little bit more powder, just so I can get right up to my lash line and underneath my eyeliner, because I find if my makeup smudges anywhere, it tends to be there. And then I'm just going to take some powder and I'm just going to push it into the rest of my skin. So when it comes to my eyebrows, I like to keep them very soft, and I don't like to add too much product on. I mean, because my eyebrows aren't necessarily like sparse or thin, I just kind of like to define them a bit more rather than completely reshaping them. My Maybelline Brow Satin Pencil is perfect for when I'm more pale, and this is in the colour Dark Blonde, and I just add a little bit more length to my tail at the end. You probably can't even really see it on camera. And then I'll just go on the bottom a bit. But this is where I'd use the powder side more than the pencil side. Whereas normally I like to use the pencil and then maybe just define them a little bit more with like a powder or a pomade. And on this side, because it's a little bit more sparse under my arch, I just like to fill that in a bit more. And I don't need to add any length because this one comes down a bit more anyway. So then I'm just going to take the powder side and just go mainly in the front and then just kind of drag it out. When it comes to bronzing and contouring, I tend to reach for this. This is Harmony by MAC. It's actually a blusher, but it's the perfect sort of bronzer contour colour for someone with pale skin because it's not too grey and it's not too orange, it's got like a pinky undertone. So I'm just going to take it on my Real Techniques blush brush and I'm just going to use it where I would put bronzer. And then just to help sculpt out my cheekbones a little bit more, I'll take it on my Real Techniques contour brush and just deepen it up in the areas that I would normally contour. You could also use, like sometimes I'll use my Sleek Contour Kit in light because that is a nice colour. And then one of my favourite blushes to use when I've got sort of more pale skin is Well Dressed by MAC. It's a very sort of light, almost like bubblegum pink. And I feel like I can only get away with it when I am pale, but it just gives like a nice sort of pinky kind of wash of colour without looking too crazy. And then for my highlighter, I'm going to use the Makeup Revolution Vivid Bakes highlighter in the colour Golden Lights. It's like a white sort of highlight with a gold kind of shimmer running through. It is pretty, like a quite dramatic highlight. So I'm just going to take my Morphe M510 brush and I'm just going to dip it a couple of times in there. Tap off any excess and then just put it on the high points just to give a nice kind of sheen. It is a very nice highlight though, if you're looking for a more of an affordable highlighter. It just adds a nice sort of wash of colour without looking too crazy, because I find that sometimes a lot of highlighters can look too gold. I just take the brush that I use to apply my powder and just sort of go over it all, just to help tone down. So it just gives your face a little bit more definition without looking too crazy, which is what I prefer. It just looks a lot more soft. I mean, just because you're pale doesn't mean you can't go for more dramatic, but I wanted to show you a little bit more of like a subtle look. Just to add a little bit of highlight under my brow bone, I'm going to take Colour Strange from the Urban Decay Naked 3 palette on my MAC 242 brush. I'm just going to add it under my brow bone. I'm just going to finish up my eyes by doing the underneath of my eyes. I'm just going to take a pencil brush and I'm going to take the shade Nuna from the Naked 3 palette and I'm just going to smudge that underneath my lashes. And then I'm going to take the shade Blackout on a angled brush and I'm just going to push this right up against my lash line, just on the sort of outer third of my eye. I just find that this helps to open up my eyes a little bit more. I want to add a little bit of white eyeliner to my lower waterline, just again to help open up my eyes and just brighten them a bit more. So I'm just going to take one by NARS in the shade Santa Monica Boulevard. I think that's the name of it. Any white eyeliner will do. I'm just going to pop that. And then I'm just going to add some mascara to my bottom lashes, and then I'll be right back to do my lips. So I'm going to take this top colour here, which is Hue by MAC, which is one of my favourite MAC lipsticks. It's definitely something that I'll buy again. So I'm just going to take it on. This is just a Real Techniques accent brush. I did obviously clean this out before I put the lipsticks in. And then just to make that look a little bit more nude and less pink, I'm going to take a little bit of Myth by MAC and just pop that on the top. Blend that in a bit with my finger, just because I don't like it to be too heavy. So that is everything that I do for my sort of more pale skin makeup routine. Like I said, I will do something a little bit more dramatic, but I just wanted quite a wearable, everyday kind of look. If you've got pale skin, then I think you should embrace it, but it's just sometimes I feel like certain looks or certain lipsticks only suit me, or I only feel comfortable doing them or wearing them when I have got more of a tan. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to give it a thumbs up if you liked it and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!